My 35 male wife, 38 female, cheated on me yesterday. My wife and I met through online dating about a decade ago and hit it off pretty quickly. We have been married 8 years now. We own a house together and have two young, less than 6 year old, children. Neither of us had really had a successful long term relationship prior to meeting each other. We are a team and we constantly have each other's backs. We have worked through some stuff in the past, mainly financial stuff we didn't see eye to eye on, but we communicate well and work through things as a team. We are a single unit. We have not had any insurmountable hurdles until seemingly now. She is straight, always maintains that she is straight, but she definitely has the sort of style that gives off I like girls vibes. My wife has issues with where to draw the line on joking about things, and in her workplace, the level of joking, especially of a sexual nature, crosses all kinds of lines that wouldn't come near to being crossed at my workplace. I would get fired for the sort of stuff she and her coworkers joke about on a daily basis, but it comes with their work environment. Recently, she has made a new friend at work within the last couple of weeks, roughly the same age, who she could not stop talking about. Let's call her Rachel. Rachel is so funny. Rachel has a kid in our kids' class at school. Rachel sent me another funny message. She's so cool, ha ha. Rachel is roughly the same age as my wife and I, to my knowledge, and is married to a wife, and they have at least one kid. Last night I was plugging in the iPad to charge, and the iPad is linked to my wife's phone, and so messages on her phone appear on the iPad as well. She was working a late shift, so I was home alone with the kids. I was plugging it in, and there was a message notification on the screen, a phone number with no name, and the message absolutely gushing about my wife's personality, looks, etc. Now, normally, I don't dig into her messages. I see the jokes that come through sometimes, and you can tell they are jokes. But this one didn't sit well with me. It was too non-jokey, too legitimately heartfelt. And so I opened up the message. And what I gathered over the next 10 to 15 minutes is that this was Rachel texting her, and that something, not sure what, had happened earlier in the day between the two of them physically, and that my wife had put up a boundary. But then all of the messages after that were the two of them flirting back and forth, and my wife asking, what if they moved the boundary, and Rachel responding that they could discuss setting a new boundary. My wife also expressed that she wishes she had met Rachel before me, or at least before we had kids. I took pictures of all of the messages with my phone. I wasn't sure how to screenshot them and send them to myself from the iPad without her realizing. And then I started texting her and asking her how her day was, what did she get up to, etc. It is slowly revealed that she had spent the morning with Rachel, that Rachel was at our house in the morning, for the whole morning, that they had chatted about issues at work and issues with Rachel's marriage. And my wife never does this. She never has people over to the house like that. The odd time she does, I generally hear about it. She tells me because she is excited that she had an old friend over or something. And so I danced around it a bit with a few more text messages and then said, screw it. I know something happened and I'm going to put her on the spot. And I texted something along the lines of, I am about to start asking some very real questions and you need to have a very good answer. And then indicated that I had charged up the iPad for her for when she got home. The iPad lights up with my message, and then I can see that she read it, and then it lights up again with a message to Rachel with a screenshot of my message to my wife, and she says to Rachel, we're done. Rachel asks what is going on, and my wife says that I know because I can see the whole conversation on the iPad. And then she texts me back asking if she can call me in a few minutes when she can find a quiet spot at work. I told her not to call me and made arrangements for her to sleep in the basement. I am numb right now. I did not sleep last night. I had a million thoughts floating through my head. This morning, I sat with her in the early hours of the morning and had a discussion that I think we need to address this through a marriage counselor who knows better how to attack this. I asked her why, and she has no answer. She says she can't explain it. She says there is nothing wrong with me. It is nothing I did. That she is happy in life and doesn't know why she did it. She says all they did was kiss and nothing more. But I told her that I know from her messages that she was pushing for more. I poured my heart out to her, and all I got back was some mumbled, "Sorry, and I know you're hurting," etc. She doesn't know what to say, and she seems numb as well. She said she is embarrassed. I told her that she is embarrassed and sorry, only that she got caught because she obviously wasn't thinking about me or the kids. I left this morning for work, telling her that I am willing to patiently work through this with a marriage counselor, but that this was going to take some time, that this wasn't some, "Oh, it was a work party and we were all drunk and I made a mistake." This was a Thursday morning, stone cold sober, invited her into the house immediately after dropping the kids off at school. Minutes after, a couple hours after we had just had morning sex, and then flirting with her via text the rest of the day while at work together, and further getting handsy at work, all the while texting me, "How was your day? Here's what's in the fridge for the kids for dinner. Can we find some time to FaceTime the kids tonight?" I can tell by the timestamps on the text messages that she was flirting with this Rachel right prior to and right immediately after the call with the kids. I am so mad and trying to keep a level head and not do anything without rational thought put in first. I believe in trying to fix this. Does anyone have any advice or pointers, etc., on how to go about this? I have already made clear that I want to go through marriage counseling. I have told her that I want her to get an STD screening. I have told her that she needs to smarten up at work and stop kidding around and act like a professional, regardless of what others do. She has indicated that she has cut contact with Rachel and will not speak to her other than in a professional capacity when she has to at work. I have photos of the messages they sent to one another, and my wife does not know that I have them, only that I could see what was on the iPad. I have told her she can get comfy in the basement for a while. I don't know if there is anything else I can do right now. Is this a lost cause? Should I just go scorched earth? I don't want to do that to my kids. Should I get her checked for a tumor? I so badly want to believe she has some tumor that has tweaked her brain. This is just so out of left field. It came out of absolutely nowhere and is nothing like her. And she seems to have no real idea of why it happened, other than she got curious. Should I try and get in touch with Rachel's wife and let her know? Or see if my wife has the balls to do it? Or just leave that one well enough alone? She's got another late shift today, and I am at work now, so we probably won't cross paths again until tomorrow morning. We have a weekend of kids' birthday parties to attend, which I don't know how we'll get through without people realizing there is something terribly wrong between us. Any advice anyone has, I would very much appreciate before I speak to her in person again. I want to make this better, and I don't want to feel like I screwed it up by trying the wrong way if it goes south. TLDR. My wife brought a woman home yesterday, and they did something physical on the couch together, at the very least kissing for an extended period. My wife has no explanation. I would like to try and tackle this in a rational way, and am seeking advice on if there is anything else outside of marriage counseling that would be beneficial at this time. Update. My 35M wife 38F cheated on me yesterday. Disclaimer. I had originally posted in another sub and decided to do an update because I was feeling good about things, and 95% of the comments I've received are extremely negative and have me second guessing everything now, and I'm sinking into a bit of a depression as a result. I do not feel good about myself presently. I feel like I've been a bit of a chump or a doormat when I thought that I was being strong and reasonable to try and save my marriage. I thought now may be a good time to give an update on where things are at with this, since I received some extremely helpful advice from several of you in the midst of the emotional thickness of all of this. Let me preface this by stating that I am an extremely reasonable person. There has been only one instance in my life where I have drawn a line that cannot be crossed, and everything else, even if I call it a hard line, I am willing to look at it from a distance and argue that there is some flexibility to it if there is valid reason to give such flexibility. This is one of those instances. Life is too complex to live in a rigid structure. The only caveat I have to this is that I don't make emotional decisions. I make decisions based in fact, logic, reason, etc. I do not let my emotions take control, and that is where I feared I would go with this, because all I was feeling was emotion. Some background on my wife. I don't know what I said in my post previously or in any comments in an attempt to keep some anonymity, but my wife is an ER nurse. If you've seen some of my other posts, you'll probably note that my sister is also a nurse. So was my mom. I guess you stick with what you know, right? LOL. ER nurses see some real crap. Stories my wife has told me include things like bashed in skulls, stuff sticking out of eyeballs, chopped off, or better yet, partially chopped off limbs, hopping on top of people and breaking their ribs to do chest compressions, kids dying. You know, things that people aren't meant to see day in and day out. And that caused PTSD, and there is no help for them. My wife used to drink a lot, but has been sober pretty much since we had kids. When she stopped drinking, she went into a bit of a depression for some time and eventually went through a bit of therapy and got onto a med of some kind that controlled her mood a bit. She functioned fine on this for several years, but looking back, she was a bit of a robot on it, and she gained some weight. She is a very athletic person, and the weight gain finally got to her, and she quit, unbeknownst to me at the time, the drug she was on cold turkey, when apparently you're supposed to wean off of it over several months. She quit early in the new year as part of a resolution to get back into shape. My wife had a relationship with a woman when she was in university. It is the type of thing that would never fly in her family, and she hid it from them. I always chalked it up to a bit of experimentation post leaving home. She always maintained that they never slept together. My wife is presently part-time at school, online courses mostly, to improve her career. My wife has never shown emotion well. She was raised to, in her words, bury that crap down and not let it out, because it would make her look weak. My wife is definitely undiagnosed on the spectrum of several things, ADHD, maybe autism. Her mom is a teacher and recognized it at an early age and refused to have her stuck with a label, as she saw firsthand what it did to a lot of other kids. Some background on the state of our relationship when everything went down. We attended marriage counseling within a few days of the incident, and one of the key things that came out of it is that the counselor described us as having fallen into functional roles within the relationship and had been prioritizing survival over everything else and let our relationship fall to the back burner. She said that it is very common for couples with young children to fall into this trap. You have been sleep deprived for years. You're at the busiest time in your careers, etc. And it's true, my wife and I probably hadn't had a deep, meaningful discussion with each other in more than a year, because when we had the energy to, we were tag teaming the kids or house or at some event, and when we had the quiet time to talk, we didn't, because we just wanted to go to bed. The immediate requests. I called a lawyer. I was an emotional mess. They rhymed off a fee bordering on just shy of $1,000 just to come in and talk about my options. And then if I wanted to proceed with preparing divorce papers, that I would need to pony up about $10,000 that they would put in a retainer that they would draw off for divorce papers, mediation, court fees, etc. And then they told me there was a conflict and that they couldn't represent me. I called another lawyer and left a message, still in an emotional state, and they got back to me with similar fees, but I never actually set up a meeting with them. I felt that I was still in too emotional of a state to start spending money on things like that. Around midday the next day, after confronting her, I took the advice of a few people in here and made a list of demands, so to speak. She was in what I can only describe as a catatonic state emotionally, dead faced. I don't know what I was looking for from her, but it wasn't that. But again, I am a reasonable person. She is human, and she is dealing with something too. So I tried not to let that get the best of me. I told her that if we were to move forward from this, that there would be an open phone policy. I get to look at it any time I want, and that if I need her to access something for me, she was to do so without question. I said I want to go to a marriage counselor to get the advice of someone who is knowledgeable about relationships, instead of us trying to sort it out by ourselves. I said I wanted her to quit her job to get away from Rachel. I said I wanted her to write down everything that happened between the two of them, whether she thought I knew about it or not, on paper, and that that would be the basis of truth, and that if I found out anything more happened, or she wasn't completely honest, that I would end it. I told her that she needed to cut contact completely with Rachel, and that Rachel's wife needed to be notified in some form or another, with my wife acknowledging her part in the affair. Finally, I told her that she could sleep in the spare bedroom indefinitely, so we each had some space. The bending of the rules, she wrote down everything that happened. She contacted Rachel once more with my permission to tell her to inform her own wife what happened. Once we got confirmation from Rachel that that had occurred, I got in touch with Rachel's wife and had a discussion. Via Rachel's wife, I found out that there was another kiss that occurred at work the day prior to the events that I was aware of. I let this smolder with myself until the next morning when I confronted my wife on it that she had not written down the whole truth. First, she claimed she forgot. Then she claimed she didn't think it was significant enough to write down, given my focus on what happened in our home. And then when I told her I was a coin toss away from divorce because of something so very simple, she had an angry outburst and told me to just do it then. And honestly, it did not hurt me to hear her say that. It felt good to see her not be able to hold on to emotion, to have something fizzle through the shield. But inside, I pushed my line in the sand back. It hurt me to do that, but I pushed it back and said once again, she's human, and she obviously wasn't perfect before. How can I expect her to be perfect now? So I pushed my line back. She applied for new jobs in the hospital to try and create some separation from Rachel at work, but it was a bit of a lost cause. Areas where her skills were transferable were either not hiring or were basically nights and weekends only, meaning we'd be effectively separated, which is something I did not wish to go through. Her present skills are not really transferable to other employers in our community or within reasonable commute. Her schooling is nearing a finish and she has other prospects lined up for after she's done school, but needs to graduate first. So, I relented and said, it's not unreasonable for you to keep your current job so long as you're keeping it professional and only speak to Rachel in person if you have to speak to Rachel in person and not be alone with her, etc. She agreed to all of this and it seemed to set her mood a bit better. But once again, I was pushing a line back. Within reason, I thought, but pushing a line back. She arranged marriage counseling, and we went to see that person a couple of times. We had already started communicating very openly. The marriage counselor gave us a few ideas to consider, primarily that we had fallen into functional roles within our relationship, effectively trying to just survive with young kids and busy careers and put our relationship on the back burner, which definitely opened our eyes, and hindsight is a bit 20/20th on that. We immediately set to some improvements in that regard. The counseling and the infidelity itself also opened up a number of questions for my wife about who she is and how she functions and why she does the things she does. And she, to her credit, put a huge effort into looking into herself and figuring herself out. But we have largely stopped marriage counseling now because she's not a fan of the counselor, who seems to be on the side of, you're either straight or a lesbian, no in between. I don't disagree with her, but neither of us have really pursued an alternative counselor right now. Another line pushed back, but in my mind, we've been exposed to some new ideas and aren't having trouble communicating at all right now, so why bother sticking to that gun for no reason other than it was one of my conditions? I think it has primarily served its purpose for now. About 10 days after confrontation, we had a night where the kids were going to be away, which came up kind of unexpectedly. She had already planned months ahead of time a work event that night, and she was the sole organizer and so pretty much had to go. She wasn't sure if Rachel was going to be there or not. I told her that I cannot control her. She is her own person, but to make good choices. Even though we had a night that could have been to ourselves, we both thought it would be a good idea if we spent it apart. I went to a friend's place and played cards for a bit and came home and watched a movie. For my wife's part, we said that if Rachel showed up, just stay away from her. Let me know she's there. That's it. She stayed out very late and the next day was telling me all about how someone else's marriage at work is falling apart right now because of an affair, and that she suspects two of the ladies she was with the night before were hooking up and called them out on it. And sure enough, both of them started admitting it to her via text, and her phone was just buzzing. She goes to take a shower, and I go to check out her phone and see none other than a picture of her and Rachel next to each other at this event. Winky faces from one of the girls who we've just found out is literally cheating on her husband at this event, asking her why didn't she go to the bar with Rachel after they were done at Miniput. I take some photos of these texts and the photos and blow up at my wife and then go for a drive to cool off. I come back and she's got an explanation that she wasn't sure how I'd react and didn't want me to think the wrong thing when Rachel showed up, so didn't tell me that the picture was a group photo that she got shoved into. And to be fair, they were leaning away from each other, and my wife's smile was not a happy smile. It was a, what the F am I doing here smile. When I asked her what the other lady was, Winky facing at her, I couldn't find the message anymore, and she had deleted it. I managed to undelete it and asked why she was deleting messages, and she said because she was asked to not keep messages from her friends who were having an affair with each other. And I said, F your friends. Prioritize right now. Think long and hard about what you want and of everyone else's problems. You and I have a problem right now, and freaking around with other people's drama isn't going to help that. And she was scared. Not scared that she was found out. Scared that I was going to leave over what she considered a miscommunication. Worried that something small that she had no control over would be the tipping point. And so I pushed another line. I let that be what it was, but said no more of things like that. No more deleting messages. No more getting afraid of how I might see things. Just be honest and open and communicate, because that is less open to interpretation than the shroud of mystery. And since that point, she has been brutally honest about her day and who was there and whatnot. She was extremely apprehensive about communicating with Rachel's wife directly in some sort of apology. I was letting this one simmer on the back burner, as I respected that she likely needed to be in the right headspace to be able to admit her wrongdoings in a meaningful way to this person, whose life she had affected with her actions and choices. But, in lieu of this, Rachel's wife found my wife on the street one day and blew up in her face. My wife was like a deer in headlights and literally just smiled at her in the what the F do I do kind of smile, and didn't say much back, other than to tell her that she didn't do most of the things that Rachel's wife was accusing her of. I was about 20 feet away at the time, and just let it happen. Following that, Rachel's wife contacted her via Instagram and tried to continue it there. My wife apologized for her smiling reaction in public and stated that she just didn't know how to react. Rachel's wife said some more stuff. My wife impulsively started throwing some insults back until Rachel's wife gave my wife our home address in a veiled threat sort of way. That is the point where my wife came to me and showed me. We took some screenshots, and I told her to stop engaging with her because that was a pretty thinly veiled threat to be giving someone. I told her that she no longer needed to send any sort of apology, as we can see where that would go. Line pushback, but within reason, right? The breaking of Taj Wrigley. About a month post-confrontation, I started to experience anxiety, panic attacks, and emotional outblurts out of seemingly nowhere. I would get angry without reason. I had zero limit for the kids. I hadn't done any real work at work for close to a month, only touching things when they were at a point of emergency. When my wife found out about the work aspect, she asked if I had spoken to anybody but her about what happened, and I said no. She had touched base with a number of people at work, her doctor, her parents. She had admitted to herself that she was indeed bisexual, but that her marriage mattered more, and that she was mostly straight-leaning. She had admitted to herself that she does not deal with emotions well and was working on being more open with me. She was working out and had lost a bunch of weight. She was putting her everything into trying to repair our relationship and make herself stronger, which is all I wanted from her. And yet I resented her for it. She seemed to be doing so well, and here I was wondering what on earth I was doing. Every line in the sand I had drawn had been pushed back in some form or another. I was constantly in a state of wondering what her intentions were. I was in a constant state of stress and anxiety of trying to hold it all together. And one night I broke. I went for a drive and sat in the literal darkness at a park and wrote down my thoughts about myself. Not my marriage, not my wife, myself. I came to two major realizations. I do not think I am worth somebody's time unless I am useful to them. And in turn, I do not ask others for help as I see that as being of negative use to them. In short, I am a problem solver, and I had met a problem I could not solve by myself. My wife told me I should speak to an individual therapist and offered some places to start looking, and I took her up on that advice. And she admitted to me that she knew she broke me and that it haunted her, that she wanted to jump in front of a train every day for how she hurt me. The update. We are now 2+ months post-confrontation. We have always known that my wife is on the spectrum for ADHD and autism or similar, but we are now seeing that the ramifications of this are an inability to connect properly with people. She doesn't understand the connotation of what people are saying sometimes in the read between the lines type of way. She mimics others. That's how she has always learned to fit in. Instead of being her own self, she mimics those around her. And without an understanding of someone's intent, she can get herself into strange situations. She has started a new drug for her brain now that is helping her focus her thoughts, and she is getting away from people's drama at work. I am now seeing a therapist to work on myself. I have severe anxiety and apparently always have. I was getting short with the kids because I didn't have enough room for any more patients. I had essentially stopped working at work because I was afraid of new problems showing up that I didn't have patience for. My cup was full, so to speak. I've started cycling and I find it calming and de-stressing. My wife and I have communicated openly more in the last 2 months than we probably have in our entire relationship. We are learning about ourselves and each other and are most importantly making time for each other. We just took a trip away on our own to reconnect without the kids around. We're going on dates. We're talking to each other in the evening instead of just going to bed and looking at our phones. We are both making an effort to improve ourselves and our relationship. Objectively speaking, I am willing to forgive my wife, although I'm not sure when and I'm not sure how, because of the following things. Despite infidelity being a hard line, I thought I would never allow to be crossed. She was coming off of a brain altering drug that she had been on for several years and was trying to function with her old brain for the first time in years. She, quite literally, probably didn't realize that she was actually flirting with Rachel, at least at the beginning, and she doesn't know how to get herself out of situations. We had fallen into functional roles in our relationship. She was losing weight and looking good, and had started to receive attention from someone in an industry where there is a very tight bond between coworkers due to the PTSD. A deeply buried box within her opened up. I chose to, instead of taking the easy path of anger and move on. I chose to be her husband and stand by her as she worked through this. And if we need to split as a result of the conclusion she comes to, we will do so amicably as two stronger individuals, as opposed to through anger and resentment and brokenness. She is showing every day how much she loves me and is not being distant or dishonest or holding back on things that are bothering her. She expresses genuine remorse most days for what she did. It is not all fun and roses. Her libido is in the crapper, in part from the new drug she is on. If she misses a day of it, her mind goes bananas, and she cannot control her thoughts and goes into a spiral of anxiety. She hopes that she will be able to overcome the libido issue eventually. She says she feels bad, while I say, just give it time. She has confided in a few people at work that have all sprung forth with either similar stories of infidelity and then realizing that they made a dumb choice, or the functional roles in the relationship, or similar, and she is taking solace in the fact that she is not alone in that struggle. It is apparent to me that she is in an extremely toxic work environment as far as boundaries go. In the last 2 months, I have found out that about 3/4 of the people she works with are either mid-affair or have previously had an affair with someone at the workplace. In comparison, I have heard of only 2 such instances at my employer in the span of over a decade. TLDR. We are both putting effort into improving ourselves and our marriage. Sort of a start over where we accept what happened and move onwards and upwards.